Welcome to Future Trends, where we examine the latest stories reshaping tomorrow's international dynamics. This week's headlines: rare Japan protests against Iran war, Russia's high soldier casualties as Ukraine ups drone production, China factory prices return to growth after 3 years, Ethiopia averts Tigray war. For now, Al-Qaeda and IS affiliates infighting in West Africa, and Measles makes a comeback. Starting with politics, Magyar's Tisza defeats Orbán in Hungary. Orbán had ruled for 16 years and maintained close ties with Russia, while Magyar is expected to take a more constructive approach toward the EU and NATO. The economy, with prices rising by an EU high of 57% since 2020, was among the top priorities that drove Hungarians to the polls in a record turnout of 79.5%, the highest since the country adopted democracy at the end of the Cold War. Hungary also ranked last in the EU in the 2025 Corruption Perceptions Index. Rare nationwide protests in Japan against Iran war. Protests were held across more than 100 locations in Japan, drawing nearly 50,000 people. Initially sparked by opposition to Prime Minister Takaichi's plan to revise Article 9, the pacifist clause of Japan's constitution, the demonstrations have grown since the Iran war. Critics warn that constitutional change could open the door to involvement in wars abroad. 9 million lose voting rights in Indian border state, ahead of voting to elect a new state government later this month. About 12% of West Bengal's 76 million electorate have been removed from the 2026 rolls as part of measures officials said were to weed out duplicate or outdated entries and add genuine voters. The exercise has faced legal challenges since it was first held in the state of Bihar last year. Vietnam elects Communist Party chief as president. Replicating China's power structure, Communist Party General Secretary To Lam has also become the nation's president, unifying the two roles for the first time in modern Vietnamese history. The move represents a clear consolidation of power for Lam, who has proven to be Vietnam's most influential leader in generations. Iraq elects Kurd as president. The rise of the political official with one of the country's two main Kurdish parties comes 5 months after an election that didn't produce a bloc with a decisive majority. Hamidi, a member of the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan Party, beat out a roster of candidates that included Iraq's current foreign minister, Fuad Hussein, who was the pick of the rival Kurdistan Democratic Party. Moving to stories in conflict, Ethiopia averts Tigray war for now. The Ethiopian government extended the mandate of the Tigray interim administration by 1 year, averting a potential flashpoint for the immediate resumption of war in Tigray. The extension does not address the impasse with the Pretoria peace agreement, which leaves an elevated risk of clashes between federal government and Tigrayan forces, and could still lead to an Ethiopian military offensive to neutralize the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front by MID 2027. Russia's high soldier casualties as Ukraine ups drone production. Ukraine's armed forces say the casualty rate for Russian soldiers in Ukraine increased to a new monthly high in March, with over 35,000 casualties, marking a significant increase compared to previous months. Ukrainian officials say drones accounted for 96% of these losses, while the remainder resulted from artillery and small arms fire. Al-Qaeda and IS affiliates infighting in West Africa. Conflict between Jama'at Nusrat al-Islam wa al-Muslimin, JNIM, and IS Sahel Province, ISSP, has spilled over into Niger and Nigeria for the first time, as the two groups compete for legitimacy and dominance. Elsewhere in Nigeria, an insurgent attack on military targets was carried out jointly by Boko Haram and the Islamic State West Africa province, indicating a continued willingness to collaborate against state security forces despite disputes between the jihadist movements. Ethiopia plans new dams on the Nile. The move comes despite Egyptian warnings against doing so, and US efforts to mediate between the two countries. New dams would increase tensions between Egypt and Ethiopia, likely intensifying their regional proxy competition and potentially provoking a direct Egyptian military response against Ethiopia. Russian submarines tracked in UK waters. Britain said that it tracked and deterred 3 Russian submarines in the High North Maritime region, which is home to key shipping routes and undersea cables. The covert month-long operation involving British warships and military aircraft did not find evidence that Russian vessels had damaged the undersea infrastructure. Ecuador raises tariffs to 100% in feud with Colombia. Ecuador said the move was in response to its neighbor failing to adequately address drug trafficking and border security. China factory prices returned to growth after 3 years, ending deflationary streak. The producer price index grew 0.5% from a year earlier, the first growth since September 2022, ending the longest deflationary run in decades. Core consumer price index, which excludes volatile items like food and energy, grew 1.1% in March from a year earlier. Rising fuel prices drive US inflation to highest level in almost 2 years. Rising oil prices triggered by the US-Israel war in Iran started to spill over into the wider economy as consumer prices climbed 3.3% over the 12 months to March, picking up from 2.4% in February. The rise, which was expected, marked the biggest monthly change since 2022, when the world was dealing with an energy shock brought on by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Iran doubles Russia's main oil revenue to $9 billion in April. Russia's mineral extraction tax on oil output will increase in April, and revenue is up by some 10% from April last year. Limiting the windfall for Russia, the world's second-largest oil exporter, is that Russia said it ran a budget deficit of $60 billion, or 1.9% of gross domestic product, in January-March 2026. Ukraine's attacks on Russian energy infrastructure have also contributed to lower earnings and threaten oil production cuts. India to lead South Asia growth at 7.6%. The World Bank has projected that India will remain the key driver of South Asia's economic performance, with FY26 growth expected to significantly outpace the regional average. While South Asia is set to experience a slowdown due to rising global energy costs and geopolitical tensions, India continues to demonstrate strong resilience, supported by robust domestic demand and relatively stable macroeconomic conditions. Turning to development, Norway to deploy world's largest fleet of electric hydrofoil ferries. The uniquely fast and silent vessels will speed up commuting along Norway's fjord-lined coast, where water travel is an essential part of daily transport. Norway is already the world's most electrified car market, with around 99% of new car sales fully electric. Largest ever annual drop in foreign aid. Total assistance for 2025 dropped 23% to $174.3 billion, down from $214.6 billion the year before, representing the largest annual drop since the OECD began recording the data. Much of that decline was attributed to a major shortfall in funding from the US, with a nearly 57% drop. The OECD's 4 other top contributors, Germany, the UK, Japan and France, also fell, marking the first time foreign development assistance from all 5 of the OECD's top donors simultaneously declined. Congo says its Mpox outbreak is over after 2 years and more than 2,200 suspected deaths. Congo declared the end of its 2-year Mpox outbreak, which recorded over 161,000 suspected cases and 2,200 suspected deaths. The outbreak had previously prompted the WHO to declare a global health emergency in 2024, a designation it lifted in September. US-Australia mineral investments. The two countries have jointly committed more than $3.5 billion to critical minerals projects, exceeding initial pledges of at least $1 billion each, Australia said. Investments include a nickel mining project and a rare earths refinery. Measles making global comeback. Canada already lost its measles elimination status last year, And now the US and Mexico, where cases have climbed into the thousands, face a similar fate. Measles has persisted primarily in low-income and lower-middle-income countries like Bangladesh, the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, and Pakistan, where vaccination rates remain low. Finally, our social news. Anthropic's new AI model too powerful for public release. Its new AI model, Claude Mythos Preview, is so advanced at finding software weaknesses that Anthropic fears it could become a hacker's most powerful tool, so is keeping it private. It's believed to have uncovered tens of thousands of critical software vulnerabilities across every major operating system and web browser. During testing, the model allegedly autonomously broke out of its sandbox, a secure virtual environment, and independently published details of its own escape online. Instead, it has given controlled access to more than 40 tech and financial firms, including Apple, Google, and Microsoft, to find and patch flaws in critical systems. Wild chimpanzees coordinated attacks between two groups. A new study describes what may be the first case of a unified community of chimps in Uganda turning on itself. While chimpanzees have long been known to wage campaigns of lethal aggression on outsiders, witnessing a once unified group turn on itself is something new and very human. Paleontologists identified 250-million-year-old fossil egg of mammal ancestor. The find provides the first direct fossil evidence that early mammal ancestors laid eggs. The embryo belonged to Lystrosaurus, a sturdy plant eater that survived the end Permian mass extinction roughly 252 million years ago. New stool test detects 90% of colorectal cancers. Colorectal cancer is the second leading cause of cancer-related deaths worldwide. However, colonoscopies, the primary screening method used, can be costly and uncomfortable. Using machine learning, researchers have developed a new approach, creating the first detailed catalogue of all human gut bacteria at a level precise enough to reveal how different microbial subgroups function in the body. They then use this information to detect colorectal cancer based on bacteria found in simple stool samples, offering a non-invasive and low-cost alternative. That's your Future Trends update for this week. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time with more stories reshaping our world.